So welcome to a very cool, very popular, worshipped by many podcast that a lot of people know about and like. Oh, wait, what's that? Oh, I'm just getting a message. What? Oh no, it's not that. It's just an Aridonis podcast. And I'm Aridonis, and that over next to me, that's Nick from the Sylvia Platters.
Hey, how's it going?
Uh, I'm pretty good.
Good.
I'm happy that you came.
Yeah, me too. It's been a while.
It's been so long, and the funny thing is, it's like I've just started doing like this is I think the third episode I've done with other humans, and the it's interesting because I've known you for like close to a decade at this point. I was thinking about
That's
it.
wild.
Isn't that
but
weird to think
true.
about? Yeah, it's a fun true thing to think about.
Yeah. Holy smokes.
Yeah, so we met when your band Sylvia Platters, which was like four people, but like four different people than it is now.
Two different people anyway.
Yeah, two different people. Yeah. Different configuration.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like to think that you and Tim have grown emotionally
That's fair.
since then.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole like ship of Theseus, right? Like
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different parts. Yeah.
That's right.
Wow, that was yeah. Hopefully
We're going there.
Hopefully you've seen WandaVision, so you get that reference because I definitely didn't read it. But yeah, so we were my band Western Jaguar was going on tour of Vancouver Island with your band Sylvia Platters, and we played 4 shows together.
I think we had like a kickoff show locally and then
Yes.
3 on the island. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like at the captain's cabin in Mission or
That's
something.
right.
Yeah. Something to that effect. And it was it was a pretty I mean it was a memorable experience, but it wasn't I wouldn't call it a successful experience, you know.
We did it.
Yeah, we didn't like all die, I guess. Like
We
it was it was a
survived.
0 fatality rate,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was it was like in terms of like, you know, we were both still in my 200 square foot bedroom. You know, we're not doing this in like a marble room that we own.
Yeah. That tour didn't result in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you've been doing this band, this project, and it's been, I think, primarily your only music project for how long now?
8 years.
8
I think.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was still pretty fresh when we because I've also like a few years after we'd met, I produced a little EP for you guys back
right.
when I used to make records in a shed in Maple Ridge. That was a much more there was so many more eventful moments out of that.
Oh yeah, because we recorded during what was like, at that time anyway, the snowstorm of the past decade.
Of the past couple decades at least it was felt that way anyway.
Yeah.
I remember you guys because you were living in Surrey or
Yeah.
something at the time. Yeah,
I think so.
and which you know, if anybody's outside of Vancouver, I was in Maple Ridge and Nick was in Surrey, which is like you got to cross a couple of bridges. There's it's like, you know, if it could be like 40 minutes, yeah, or something, and there were you guys like were battling your way out through like 1 foot thick snow for our first day of like tracking drums and getting it all started. And before that, like my gear that I owned all shit the bed, and I had to buy new gear and was like learning how it all worked. And then the day of, I was there with my like friend Davis, and we were like shoveling the driveway because we knew you guys were gonna come in, and this studio was in a shed on a farm, so there was there was nowhere to park. It was like you had to park on like a dirt road and like hike your gear in across a field, and we
In
were
the
like
snow.
in the snow, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we had to, and you guys had like big amps, and it was a whole thing, and so we're like shoveling out this big long driveway, and then we showed up to the studio like 2 or 3 hours earlier than we normally would have, and then we get our car in. I get inside, and then we go to start everything up, and there's just no fucking power. We flip the switch, and there's just nothing. And we're like,
Yeah. It's just rock and roll.
It was so rock and roll. And I had to call you, and I think you were still like only like maybe halfway there.
Yeah.
And had to tell you to turn around.
Yeah, well, and I remember, so even beyond that too, it was like shoveling ourselves in and like out
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Tim, my brother Tim, who is a singer and drummer in the band,
Yeah.
popped a tire
Oh yeah.
on his way over one
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
there was
was
a lot going on.
It was yeah. We were dealing with adversity.
Yeah.
To to get that record done.
Yeah.
And
Did it make us stronger? I don't know. Jury's out.
yeah, I did. Well, the problem is we didn't measure our strength beforehand.
It's yeah, big mistake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We should have done more prep in that sense. But
Mm-hmm.
the EP was called Melt, and that came out in what 2017, 2018.
Yeah, actually, the 5-year anniversary of its release is coming up in June, like this month.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's like June 23rd or something.
Which is right before you're doing your album release show for your latest album, which
That's
is
right.
like a couple releases later now. You've got a red hot new lineup and some fantastic sounding new stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about. Well, hold on. Let's back up.
Sure.
Let's back up, and I'm gonna ask you my like icebreaker question.
Okay.
That I'm trying to ask everybody. So when you're on Spotify and you finish listening to the album or the playlist or the EP or whatever that you were listening to, and Spotify goes, okay, time to just play something Nick likes. It'll usually default to like one or song or one like genre. So what's your like? I call it my Spotify has given up song. So what's mine for reference is Inside Out by Spoon. Once I hear Inside Out by Spoon, I know that Spotify isn't trying to recommend me anything new. It's just trying to like placate me. It's just trying to pacify me.
I think it would be Kingston by Faye Webster.
Wow. Okay.
I think that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. Yeah.
That there's for a little while it was because Spotify didn't have me together. It was I'm trying to think of what the song is called. I can hear it, but I just know a Sedona by Houndmouth, which was like a fine song, but just I heard it so much from Spotify saying no, you like this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it just gets convinced. But I know you're actually a Faye Webster fan. So.
Yeah, I love Faye Webster.
Yeah, so that's a rewarding experience when that hits.
Yeah, it's not unwelcome, but
Yeah.
it is sort of like a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the algorithm saying like, I know you. I
Yeah,
know you.
we're gonna
like,
distill you to this one song.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're gonna boil you down. So that's good to know. So now backing up, or no, yeah, we're backing up more. You make music. You've made it with Tim, your brother, and you've done it for about 8 years. What sort of got you into the sort of songwriting frame of mind? Because I have a brother. And I have a bunch of brothers, and none of us have ever wanted to do that with each other ever. So I'm curious how that came to be with you two.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we grew up around a lot of music, both kind of, I think, from our parents at home, but also, like, family stuff would be, like, we're gonna, like, pull out some guitars and a piano and play some 60s tunes.
That's so wholesome and cool.
Or, like, in church or whatever, all that kind of stuff. But my brother and I, like he started learning drums around the same time I started learning guitar, and so we were just kind of like jamming in the garage,
Right.
and just like doing whatever for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think like we played in these sort of like high school bands, like rock bands,
Yeah.
as well as like, class band.
Right.
So we like played in a few bands like that, and then like both kind of just started writing, and at that time sort of joined together with a couple of friends of ours to start a band called the Hot Moonbeams.
Great name.
Yeah, and we did that for a couple of years in college.
Right.
And then kind of out of the ashes of that, like both of us knew we still wanted to be making music, and then so after a couple of years kind of got back out there with a new band, and here we are.
Right.
Yeah, but so it's always kind of just been part of our relationship, like enjoying and appreciating music, but also just playing music.
Right.
So yeah, it just always felt kind of natural. Like I feel like every band I've been in has had my brother
Yeah.
in it, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of just the way it is.
Part of the experience
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
synonymous. Well, that's cool. And then and so how did the name the Sylvia Platters roll out? Because I know you guys are both like sort of big literary nerds. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely where it sort of came from. We had this new band, and we actually didn't. We cycled through a couple of different names before landing on that name, kind of leading into releasing our first album. But it was one of the earlier names we had come up with for the band.
Oh yeah.
And we just kind of like, oh, that's funny, and
Right.
kind of like sat it aside.
And it's the one that just was there at
It
the
just
end.
never went away. Like every time we go back to the drawing board and thinking about like what should our band be called, we kept coming back to it, and we're like, we should just accept that this is the name the universe wants us to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like one of those things with like that is now the identity of the band. Like that's the name of it. Even though I think to myself like, oh, I wish we had picked something more like this, or like I always find myself kind of like questioning that, but I think it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's cool how, because it's like it's a very sort of telling thing, because you think Sylvia Plath, you're like, oh, okay, well, it's a bunch of dudes, first of all.
Yeah.
And then second of all, it's like, the lyrics and the way you guys write songs is very, it's got like almost like an author's voice to it, in like the way you guys write lyrics, and they tell stories in very, it feels like, if you were reading the lyrics, it feels like reading poetry or reading a novel, and it's very, makes a lot of sense once you sort of get past that, and I think I've always thought it was just so clever and cool.
that's great. I'm glad to hear that, because
Yeah.
like our own moments of self-doubt notwithstanding, like we've just sort of embraced it over time, I think. And, yeah.
It works so well. And then, so from there, you guys have put together quite a bit of material over the last, 8 years. You've got what, like the first thing you put out was like a full album, right?
14 songs.
Yeah.
And we recorded like 20 something in the sessions for that record.
Nice.
It was just kind of like, it was the floodgates kind of moment, because
Right.
again, like we had a few songs left over from the Hot Moonbeams days, and we had several years of like writing and kind of just jamming around. And like when you're not playing shows and doing that kind of thing, I feel like, at least personally, like this is also true at the beginning of the pandemic for me, suddenly I'm like writing, like I'm focusing so much more energy on writing. And so we just had so much to kind of like explore and figure out, and we're still kind of figuring out what the band was too. So that first album in particular is very eclectic.
Yeah. It goes a lot of places, and a lot of those places are different than where you're at now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was definitely a different kind of project at that stage.
It was very poppy. And,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and these days it's got a lot more on like the shoegaze and kind of noisy industrial end of the spectrum.
Yeah, we've definitely embraced a little bit more, not, I don't want to say like kind of garagey kind of things, but just certainly more of the like a different kind of texture to the way that and like even just kind of like thematically and stuff too, but like I think in terms of just how it sounds and feels is very different. So,
yeah. It's crinklier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas before it was more like a nice linen sheet.
Yeah, lots of smooth edges.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And so was that sort of where you think you were going to end up regardless, based on your guys' influences, or was that kind of a journey you went on along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think like definitely that first record, we were really exploring a lot of different sort of avenues that are all kind of like in that indie guitar pop vein. And I think that was a necessary step for us to kind of get to, like, I think really with that record we recorded with you, the EP, that was the first time we kind of distilled it down into something that was a little bit more consistent and focused.
I remember that. You guys were very, very, like, careful about what you made like a playlist of like, this is what we're going for, and it was very like, and I was very surprised because I was expecting like a more of a pop record, and then
Right.
as we sort of dug into it, you were like, what if I just plug this Rat pedal like straight into the like JCM like jazz amp, and it sounded like, and I was it sounded like being electrocuted in a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
I was like, that's what I want.
Yeah, and I was like, really, that's what you want, like,
Yeah.
And in my head I got this like Daphne,
Right.
it's like these
Yeah.
cute little melodies, and it was like not that at all, and
Yeah.
it was a very it was a cool experience to see you guys kind of like make that call.
And I think that like since then too, like so sort of we definitely that record is probably our most sort of like shoegazy kind of atmospheric sort of approach to any of our releases. And I think that it's not even so much that we've dialed that back, but we've shifted a little bit more towards sort of like a jangly pop guitar sound. And there are definitely moments similar to what's on Melt, but it's kind of like shifted again and again and become refined in a different sort of way. Like I think we're kind of like, there's that first release which is very eclectic and here, and then we're kind of like, we're gonna go here, and then we're kind of like, actually we're gonna go a little bit like this.
Yeah, it's like you started with the tapas, and you're like, you know what? I think I'll have this all 3 meals.
Yeah.
And then you were like, you know what? No, maybe we'll do we'll spice up the dish a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You've landed on a nice American cheeseburger.
He says to the vegan.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited for this show that's coming up because I also get to play in it in a way that I didn't expect. It just kind of, and it's funny because the lineup for this show is kind of like a who's who of the like 10 years ago Abbotsford music scene.
Yeah, in a way.
And it's like it's almost like a greatest hits of like the UFV sort of circa 2015 2016 kind of scene that was going on that has slowly shifted to downtown Vancouver, and it's weird how all of us are just over here now.
Migrated west.
Yeah, except for Western Jaguar. They were the only ones that didn't make it.
Yeah, they went east, right? Like Jeffson, Chilliwack.
Jeffson,
right?
Chilliwack. Yeah, and so so we've like once the pandemic started, we found it more and more difficult to like get together, and so at this point, it's kind of just like we'll get to it, because now we've all filled our time with other stuff.
Totally.
So, I'm really excited to see all that come together, because you even got you've since I saw you guys last play, because it was your bass player's last show, and I did a live production.
That's right.
For you guys for. Was it for something?
Jam and Jubilee.
It was Jam and Jubilee, Jam and Jubilee for 2020, and we were were doing Zoom shows and stuff, and so I was running that, and then you guys. And then you changed up the lineup again because there was you guys weren't sure if you weren't going to continue or at the time.
No, I think at the time we knew we wanted to keep going. And so we then kind of went through, and that was our last. That's been our last show. Like this will be our first show back.
Right. Yeah.
2 years later.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is wild, and I mean we've been busy like finding a new bass player, writing, recording this new thing, all that kind of stuff. So, so we kind of like simultaneous to kind of preparing for that last show, we were kind of talking to people and, bringing people by to play with us and seeing kind of what worked. And then eventually sort of landed on, it was kind of like under your nose the whole time,
right? Yeah,
kind of thing. So the person,
girl next door,
so after all this searching, we kind of came back to asking Steve and Carl O'Shea, who we had put out a split LP with, in 2018, and so previously, that release wasn't. I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a collaborative record, even though we were able to pull off a little neat trick where we both have the title of the album on different tracks. But through the process of putting out a release together, we had kind of worked together and knew we got along really well. And, had gone on tour together and all this kind of stuff. And Steven previously played in You Say Party and Real Boys and these other, classic Abbotsford acts. Many of which, toured internationally and all this stuff. And so we knew we were kind of like bringing somebody in who had lots of experience, who we had played with before, and yeah, and we kind of had sort of like not approached him at first because we were like, he's got to be too busy. Like,
Yeah,
there's no
yeah,
way
there's
he's
no
gonna
way.
want to do this.
Yeah.
And then so we were really surprised when he was like, I'm like totally into this. Like I want to do this. I need to do this. And he hadn't played like in a band for quite a while.
Yeah, because he released that sort of solo thing, and
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
As far as I knew recently.
He's been, well, yeah, I mean, he's done some like experimental collaborative kind of projects.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually working on something really wild, and I don't want to scoop this in case like he comes on here at some point, but he's doing this thing where he's recording this continuous piece of music 1 minute a month for 10 years.
Wow.
And he's been releasing this now for a year or two.
Nice.
So he has like those kind of things that he's working on that are again like a little more experimental solo kind of stuff. But yeah, he was really excited about the idea, and it just clicked, and so here we are.
Nice. And you guys, so how did, because you guys have had kind of at least a different bass player for every or almost every one of your releases,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
But so does the creative process kind of changed in terms of how you guys write, or?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, like everyone brings different strengths and perspectives to the table for sure. And I think like I don't know if like, because there's a mixture of like, depending on the song, it plays out differently. Sometimes it's like I bring something that's pretty fully formed, and then like we figure out parts and make adjustments to it. So that happens. But I think the way that Stephen plays is very like it's kind of like very what's the word for it? I don't want to say like bare bones, because that's not what it is. It's just like very it's sort of subtle. Like he's not playing a lot of flashy stuff, and he really wants it to be kind of like anchored in.
Right. Yeah, he's trying to serve the song.
Yeah,
like
very much.
Yeah, he's trying to. He's not trying to like stomp all over it. I do the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Whenever possible.
And as a guitar player, when I make demos and I record bass, it's like he has to rein in all the like the crazy stuff I'm doing.
Yeah, guitar player shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of like part of it. And then I think he also has like an interesting ear for like trying to kind of like, again, like my instincts are to be a little bit poppier and very like straightforward and bright and sunny, and like Stephen will kind of come in and be like, what if we kind of twist the knife a little bit this way? And I think it adds a lot of like interesting darkness, I think.
That's cool.
And counterbalance to things. And so I think that plays really well off of the way I tend to go for things.
Well, and that's kind of one of the themes that keeps coming up every time I interview somebody, is it's always like it's always like, yeah, I like having ideas, but I really love when my ideas meet up with somebody else, and I get to filter my ideas through somebody else's brain a little bit.
Totally.
And that's what, always what's been kind of cool about like you guys as a band is it's a lot more, it's always sort of community made in the sense like I can hear the personality of each individual member on every part they do and every part of the song, which is cool, versus other bands I've played in for sure where it's like one person bringing in the thing and then we just learn it and go.
That's it.
And it's really cool to kind of hear your guys', it's got this like Led Zeppelin type sort of like mythology to it, where it's like, yeah, you can really hear how everybody wants to do things their own way, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think that's really true, like what you're saying about like that interaction and that kind of like running with somebody else's kind of like input and idea. Like I often find it easiest to write in response to like an idea that somebody else kind of initiates or brings to the table. So an example would be like Invisible Ink, which is a single we put out in 2020.
Yeah.
That came from like Alex playing that riff at practice, and I was like, perfect. And I took it away and kind of wrote the song. Or like, Tim will often like be like, I've got kind of this like chorus.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, cool, give me like a couple hours. And like, it just like triggers something, and it's easier to kind of like unlock that sometimes than if I'm sitting there by myself trying to like generate ideas.
That's my least favorite part of being a musician, period, is just like that nothing and then trying to like flip the switch and go from 0 to 1,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's challenging for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. So so as far as like the recording goes and how you got all the nerdy aspects, what kind of cool sounds can we look forward to?
Yeah, so this new release is going to be a cassette,
Hmm.
and we tracked it last summer at the Noise Floor on Gabriola
Sweet.
with Jordan Coop,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
and that was
that
a great experience.
so
Like,
was that something that Steven brought along or
um,
suggested, or because
no,
I know
well,
he's got a bit he was around in that era, right?
yeah,
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 where guys like him were the dudes, you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And he'd recorded with Jordan before
right.
at the Noise Floor. But I think like we were kind of like we wanted to try to do the kind of like we're gonna go away somewhere together and
Hmm.
make a record, and it seemed like such a fun environment to do that, where you can like
It's the
go hit
best.
the
Yeah.
beach after, you
Hmm.
know. So that was a really cool aspect of the process, I think, for us, just to get out, and especially like kind of like new dynamic, new person in the band. It was a really good opportunity for us to kind of just spend some time bonding, basically,
Yeah.
and so that was, yeah, a really great experience to kind of do that together. But yeah, I really enjoyed working with Jordan, and I think he helped us kind of bring out some of those kind of more jangly pop kind of sounds.
Nice.
And just very, I think Jordan is a really excellent collaborator
Hmm.
in the sense that he'd be kind of like, I don't know, like we'd be kind of like working on some backing vocals, and then he'd kind of come back into the booth and be kind of like, like maybe one higher, like maybe go one above that. Like, okay, I like
Yeah.
what you're thinking. Or like there's a song, Blue Juniper, where it's double track Tim playing two tambourines,
Hmm.
and it just, I love that. I
Right.
love the just like percussion is king,
Right.
kind of idea that really shines through there.
Awesome.
So yeah, like I think it was really great, and again, kind of leans more that sort of direction with things. So very bright in a certain respect, but also a little bit like the edges are rougher too, and
Sweet.
yeah, and I think we kind of like there's a couple like more minor key aspects in there, but yeah, I'm excited to get it out there.
Yeah, I'm excited to dust off my Walkman and listen to it. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent, yeah.
So then we've got this show at the end of the month,
Hmm.
and then do you guys have any other sort of fun marketing attached to it? Because I know for Invisible Ink, you did a collaborative music video shoot with like everybody you know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing quite like that. I mean, we have the cassette
Yeah.
itself, which is kind of like a bit of a thing.
Nice.
And yeah, so like we're like putting that out on streaming as well
Hmm.
on the 24th, release show on the 25th. And then we're going to be playing a couple of shows in Alberta in August, and I think we haven't confirmed the dates, but a couple of shows are hopefully in the works for the island in September. So
Sweet.
kind of making some of the rounds, like not going too far out of our sort of
Yeah.
little Western Canadian nest.
Right. Yeah.
But that'll be really nice to kind of like get back to some of those places after so long. It's been like 4 years or
Yeah.
3 years since we played some of those cities, and
Yeah.
I always really like it's like kind of like not to sort of like inflate my sense of self-importance, but like there is a bit of a sense of like profit in your hometown
Hmm.
aspect of like sometimes when you go on tour and you play a city and you're like, wow, people are like really out for this, and
Yeah.
like I don't know, there's something different about like this is a touring band versus like this is just a local band kind of.
I know the feeling. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like people left their homes. Yeah, no, I get it. It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of it comes from a humble place, at least in my mind, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's something satisfying about that being like, yeah, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
sick.
know, so that'll be good. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then yeah, and then it's just back to the grindstone, make a new thing, or are you guys gonna like try and get to Europe or something?
I mean, I think sort of regardless of wherever our ambition lies, like the ongoing reality of the pandemic just makes any bigger plans seem a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't feel that comfortable committing to them.
Of course. Yeah.
So kind of like this for now. Like we have a lot of other material, and so
Hmm.
we're figuring out what to do with that.
Hmm.
But I mean, beyond kind of that initial run of shows, like definitely want to play some more local gigs and
Right.
kind of like build that back up a little bit again and
Yeah.
get
Make
out
new
and see
friends.
the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, like get back in touch with that sense of like a music community beyond just the four of us who are in
Right.
the
Yeah,
room
yeah, yeah.
making the
Yeah.
record together.
Get outside of your bubble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so that's always a great opportunity to do that when you can play shows. So
Well, that's awesome,
mhm.
and I'm really looking forward to hearing the full versions. I skimmed through the record and I didn't want to spoil it too much for myself.
You got to listen to it on cassette. That's
exactly.
The way it was meant to be heard.
I was yeah, and so and then getting to see you guys play live, because one thing about Sylvia Platters that's important to know is that they're very loud. Very loud. You guys, like, it's you. I look forward to the days when you guys make it to a venue that can handle you. Because I think the last time I saw you guys was at Avant Garden for your split single release, and there was no vocals to speak of.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah,
because part of I mean, at that time especially, you guys were you went hard, and so there was and it's just it's so epic, and I want it. I want the live experience to match that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's so I'm stoked to see how you guys go forward, and we'll check in again in another 8 or 10 years or something, if not sooner.
Episode 1100 of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens then. But it's been super sweet having you on.
Yeah,
and I don't mean to rush you out of here, but I suddenly have Jack White tickets for tonight. Yeah.
Amazing.
Speaking of too loud for every venue.
Yeah,
but,
that'll be fun. Yeah, that's great.
I'm stoked. But so thanks a bunch, Nick, for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And for continuing to make cool stuff for years in a row.
We try.
Yeah. And I'm going to sign this podcast off in a sort of official way. Go follow Sylvia Platters. Next week, we're probably going to have Kier and Allie from some of the other groups on that bill, because we really want to hype up this show.
Oh, yeah.
And, we'll dig a little bit more into the mythology of, and the history of some of these bands from this weird, specific niche point in time that we seem to have dug up.
Yeah, we should have called it the Resurrection Show.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because it's like the only thing is missing is like Aaron Levy smoking outside.
Well, maybe that can be arranged. I don't know. We'll see.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, we'll leave that. You have to show up to find out.
I've never seen him outside Abbotsford. I don't know what that would even look like. I don't know if he'd just vanish. Yeah. It's the man's a myth. Anyway. Go follow Sylvia Platters. I put together a playlist for Just an Aridonis podcast that's just got little selections from all the folks I've been having on lately. Just support cool stuff. And if you're a musician that wants to talk a little bit more about what you're doing and, be a little bit more involved in this community, then feel free to reach out to me and sign up for the Vancouver Musicians Discord page that I set up. All the links are in all of my bios everywhere. And y'all are sweet. Thanks. Bye.